Anime is an evolving industry, going from the very first productions of animation in Japan to the high-quality productions that we see on a regular basis today. However, one thing has been a constant throughout the decades of anime creation. The grand majority of them are completely unoriginal. With each new anime season, we get a ton of new series, and most of them have source materials, whether it's a manga, light novel, or even the occasional Japanese webcomic. These source materials are practically the foundation of the industry, and it would be nowhere near as prolific otherwise. However, last year in 2020, there was an attempt by a portion of the industry to expand the horizons of what can become an anime. I am of course talking about that time 3 of the biggest manhwa to hit webtoons got their own respective anime adaptations. This was kind of a huge deal. It was something very experimental, having studios leave their comfort zone and adapting material from outside their national borders. It's not like this has never been done before, but it was never so widely advertised or well produced. Because of this, a great impression is everything. Unfortunately, to put it bluntly, what we got kinda sucked. That's not to say that these adaptations were all without merit, as I will go over in the video, but none of them got the start that any of them really deserved. So today I want to take a close look at what happened here. I want to talk about how Crunchyroll killed the next era of anime. This all started on February 25th of 2020 when the first teaser for the Tower of God anime came out. It's no exaggeration to say that Tower of God is one of the most popular, well-known, and well-regarded webtoons out there, so naturally a massive group of fans rejoiced at seeing their favorite series get an adaptation. Now, if you never read a webtoon or a manhwa before, you can't imagine what this was like. When you love a manga or even a light novel, there's a solid chance it might get an anime, but webtoon fans held no such delusions. The odds of them getting an anime were just a faint hypothetical of, hey, wouldn't that be kinda cool? So Tower of God getting an anime and then getting lots of promotion was a huge deal. However, there were problems. On the surface, the Tower of God anime looked good. I especially liked the art style, as I think it adapted the comic's early style well while making it more professional. The good things didn't last though. We quickly got introduced to the problem that would plague all 3 series discussed in this video: cut content. Even in just the first episode of Tower of God, we get pieces of dialogue totally cut that contributed characterization and world building. In terms of just the anime, technically it all works and makes sense when self-contained, but it overall makes it so later parts of the story that haven't been adapted yet will be confusing or just inconsistent. Not every change is bad though. I do somewhat like the stuff they added in episode 3 to add to Kun and Bomb's friendship, but overall most of what they change is just handled very messily. One very consistent change in the anime is how often Bomb's major scenes are cut or changed. He's the main character after all, so that's kinda weird. But in episode 9, they just totally cut out a really important monologue of his. It's easily one of the best moments in season 1 of the webtoon, giving him great characterization. In the same episode, they changed the scene so that Bomb can't show his reaction to Ho's death, despite it again giving him good characterization. And again when they cut his dialogue with Hansung Yu in episode 11. Stuff like this made Bomb in the anime very bland and hurt the overall experience of the show. And there are loads more cut from the webtoon that overall contributed to a better understanding of the world, characters, and themes. And you know what makes this even worse? Out of the Crunchyroll webtoon adaptations we got, Tower of God is by far the best one. These changes are tame compared to what's next. This brings me to the God of High School. Where can I even begin with the God of High School? Whereas making a Season 2 for Tower of God would be difficult, making one for God of High School would be impossible. It's no surprise either, as its first 113 chapters got compressed into 13 episodes. Don't let the pretty animation fool you, because right away we get the first 3 chapters of the webtoon almost entirely cut. And then it started to really get noticeable in episode 3 in Daewi's fight with Sungchul Baek. Now if you only watch the anime, I wouldn't even blame you you if you don't remember this guy. Well, in the webtoon, he has an entire backstory that is completely cut out, which is important because he eventually becomes a part of the main cast. And here he's just relegated to the position of a random side character that one guy fights. It's ridiculous, and it only gets worse. I don't need to tell this to anime-onlys, but the pacing is atrocious, and it's because content simply keeps getting cut. Major relationship-building moments gone like they were nothing. Entire character-progressing fights never even allowed to happen because the anime restructured the rules of the tournament. And I could go into the finer details of why the God of High School Anime fails as an adaptation, but at the end of the day, it all culminates in it being a confusing action story devoid of sense, meaning, and substance, and no good animation was going to save it from that. And then we have the travesty that is Noblesse. This one was doomed to fail from the beginning. That's because in 2016, Noblesse already had a 30-minute ONA that covered a little under 100 chapters. When Crunchyroll came around, instead of starting fresh, the new anime just continued off of that and covered chapters 93 to 200 in 13 episodes. Cutting content doesn't even matter at that point because those in charge didn't even allow the series to be given a proper fresh start. In fact, none of these stories were really given their proper chance. But so what, right? Why does this matter? After all, loads of series get bad adaptations. This is nothing new. So what makes these webtoon series getting shafted by Crunchyroll at all relevant? It's because of what these anime represented. There was a time when these stories were considered the big three of webtoon. Noblesse was always the black sheep of this title, but it was still very relevant when it was running. And so these adaptations opened the doorway for many other series to get adaptations themselves. Loads of webtoons and manhwa that would likely never be seen by mainstream audiences otherwise. Series that fans basically gave up on seeing an anime for. So when Tower of God got its announcement for an anime, it was not only fans of the series that were rejoicing, it was fans of webtoons and manhwa collectively. People who saw that single adaptation as a light of hope that their favorite series might receive the same treatment. Now with all three of them done with, that hope has turned into a prayer that their favorite does not receive the same treatment. It was a wasted chance. A chance for anime studios to tap into an entirely new source of storytelling. It was a chance for an entirely new era of anime defined by the mass-scale broadening of source materials. But Crunchyroll killed it before it even had a chance to properly begin.